What is going on, Movie Meals? Movie Meals back to back to backs here. We're here for Northman. Um, Before we get into it, thank you to Kimberly, Karen, thank you to the patrons, all that love and support. If you want to join it, it's all linked down in the description. Get some merch. We're here to talk about the Northman, but if you watched our Everything Everywhere All at Once video, which you should go check out if you haven't, I talked about how right now there's a lot of original content out in the movie theater. There's a lot of original movies. I named a few, like even Ambulance is an original movie. We've got The Northman, which we'll get into here in a second.
The
Everything
Lost
Everywhere All
City.
at Once. But let's also not forget a movie I just saw last night too, which is The Immense Weight of Massive Talent. Another original movie that pokes fun at Hollywood, and I really like that too. So there's just a lot out there. But let's get into Northman. Let's start with the positives, non-spoiler. Kyle, what'd you think of The Northman?
The Northman is cool. Vikings are cool, guys. I'm not a or like the Nordic mythology or Nordic type stuff, what have you, but it just was able to get me right in because with Robert Eggers, he just has this way of making the atmosphere and the settings be what hooks you in. And every shot in this movie was able to hook me right in. Everything was beautiful, or everything was in tone and in line with all of the action that was involved, which is some really great directed action, by the way. All of the mystical stuff, all of the mystery that was kind of going on, but and he just is able to captivate you that way. Plus, he also was able to give me a character-based story that's not necessarily a character piece, and it's a revenge tale that's at its bare bones, like you probably have seen before, but for some reason it feels original here. And I guess it's because of his influences with his directing and making it feel much grander, despite it being like a smaller budgeted movie. I mean, it's probably his highest budgeted movie, but in terms of, movie making, it's still rather small, I would say, for the type of release that it had. But it still was able to feel both grand in scale, but also small in character-based storytelling. And while it doesn't necessarily, give you the most three-dimensional characters, it's still enough to where you're on the hero side, and then you don't want the bad guys to happen, but there's still plenty of twists and turns within those characters that are able to keep you guessing and able to keep you getting through the story, because you want to root for Alexander Skarsgård's character. I believe his name was Ameth or Ameth. I was having a hard time pronouncing like their names when I was reading through some of the characters, but the acting is terrific. They're able to make the most of otherwise a simpler story, because there's just that many talented actors. Alexander Skarsgård does a great job. He's fantastic in this. And, obviously for the likes of Anya Taylor-Joy and Nicole Kidman, they're fantastic in this movie too. But the cast just all around was able to really embrace like this weirder story that I think many audiences aren't really known for. But I think if they give it a chance, they'll be very surprised. Like in my screening, I wasn't really thinking that my audience was going to be in on it, and after 20 minutes or so they probably would be checked out, and I can notice throughout my theater. But it was a packed theater despite its screening being a size smaller. It still was a pretty packed theater, and I could tell all the way to the end that audiences that I was a part of were really enjoying it. So this one really took me by surprise. I really love this director, but he still was able to keep me guessing. Like I never know what type of movie I'm going to get out of him, and I just keep loving his stuff more and more. And I was just really impressed by what he got here.
Yeah, I literally just saw it. Kyle, I got home. We're filming, and we just filmed this one. This video is the last of what we filmed. So I had a really good time with this movie. It was a little more, it was very revenge, and yet not as revenge as I thought going in at the same time, which is just kind of interesting and different. I am a fan of the sword and sandal kind of King Arthur, Game of Thrones, that kind of history kind of stories to tell. This movie reminds me of a lot of The Green Knight in a lot of ways. It reminds me a lot of Game of Thrones in a lot of ways. But obviously we're going up to North here with Viking kind of era. And I had a really good time with it. I thought all the performances are great. I am a big fan of Robert Eggers. The Witch, awesome. The Lighthouse, weird, but awesome. This, awesome. Like I had a good time with all three of them, and every movie, probably The Witch less so, but you leave the movie theater and you're like, was I supposed to be on drugs for this? Like you leave and you're like, how was I supposed to be for this movie? It's crazy, it's cuckoo, and that's what I love so much about it, because it really dives into those myths and legends of how they acted, and you know,
Their customs
I really enjoyed it. This is probably my favorite performance by it's Alexander Skarsgård, right? It's Alex Skarsgård. Those Skarsgård boys are really something. That Skarsgård family is something, but him and his brother who played Pennywise are both really, really talented. And it took, I think, Alex a little longer to kind of get there. Like, you know, like he was good in Tarzan, and there's some other movies he's been pretty good in, but like this movie, I was like, okay, he can be a movie star. Like he really can control the whole movie on his own. Anya Taylor-Joy, you and I have been talking about it forever. Honestly, since The Witch is when I really first got into, you know, her filmography and how great of a talent she is. I think the general public's pretty on board with her now after Queen's Gambit, but but overall, this movie it's bloody, it's action filled, it's
pretty gory,
revenge. Yeah, I honestly expected more gore. Here's the type of gory it is. It's a little bit more like shock gore. Like it's not a Tarantino every time your head explodes, it's gonna be an insane amount of blood, but you'll get some scenes that you're like, oh my gosh, like you sit back that are gory like that hit, and they're usually closer up, they're a little more intimate, and I really like that. The direction is great in this. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Kyle, do you have any negatives with the film?
I will say, I believe there was reports before the movie was coming out that the studio might have had some say into how the final product turned out, that there was a little bit of studio interference. And I wouldn't say that this movie, you know, had issue with studio interference, but I think there was a few scenes where you can kind of tell that they were like, okay, we need to help out the audience just a little bit, because there is a lot of like Nordic language that is hard to understand for some people, and they might just need a little bit more hand holding and like telling you what's happening or what's about to happen next or who is who. And there was a few scenes where I think it took away from what I was enjoying about the storytelling so much, and it seemed to kind of lay it all out in front of you a bit too much, at least for my taste. And I didn't really like it, because I liked that there was, you know, a lot of me having to really follow along closely to it. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It didn't hurt the movie by any means, but there was a few scenes where I noticed like, okay, you are speaking and you're laying out the situation of the scene differently than you have for other scenes, to where it felt more like hand holding than letting the audience figure it out for themselves and follow along with the story. So was it bad for the movie in general? No, I wouldn't say so. But I do think I wish that they would have kept it going throughout and letting the audience try to figure it out for themselves a little more. But that's really the only thing that I would have for this. I think it's going to be a very good movie if people are willing to give it a chance. What about you?
Yeah, I didn't feel that personally. I never got any scenes that felt like they were holding my hand. But my only two very small nitpicks, the first one being that they do kind of chop the movie up. We're here, we're here, we're here. And so I do think it does cut the pacing a little bit, because I left going, man, I had a great time. That movie felt long. And then I looked at my watch and I was like, I was not in that movie that long. Like it was only 2 hours almost to the dot. I was like, wow. And my other little nitpick, I didn't actually think, wasn't even thinking about, and then a good friend of ours who I saw it with, we were talking about it real quick as we were walking to our cars, and he said to me, you know, I really liked the movie, but I don't know if I liked all the fighting. I thought the fighting looked a little choreographed at times. And on my drive home, started sitting there thinking, and I love the kind of climax battle. And there are some fights and some gore that I thought was awesome. But the more I sat back, the more I was like, yeah, it was a lot of more like sweeping shots that felt a little more choreographed of brute strength than like a dark and gritty sword fight up until the end. So I do agree with that.
Okay.
What?
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna try to clarify it as in like sword fighting that's choreographed, whereas you were hoping for sword fighting in the moment. but maybe that doesn't help anything at all.
If
That's
I
just how
was
I was
hoping,
picturing it.
I never at any point thought, man, I'd love a sword fight here. I just, as I
Okay,
left,
never
I
mind.
went, yeah, I think some of the fighting was a little more choreographed and felt choreographed, similar to kind of uh new Star Wars kind of saber battles in a way where it's like trying to seem
Mhm.
real. Like I'd rather you go over the top where I'm like, that's over the top. Or you go so far down that it feels much more grounded and real. But overall, it's a small nitpick. I do think some of the fight scenes could have been a little more maybe extended, a little more focused on the on what we're doing. And uh, to me, if a fight scene, if I'm looking at it and I go, man, that kind of looks like a dance, because fighting, they always say, when you're training and fighting, they always say it's kind of like a dance. But I feel like when you're actually fighting, you don't think that. You only think that later. And when I'm thinking that watching it, that's the problem. It's when I need to leave and then I go, yeah, the moves, it becomes a dance in that kind of way. But I'm sitting there watching some of it and I'm going, that's a bit of a dance that, he's grabbing him here. They're timing it a little too perfectly. And then I did not think that at the end, at the final climax. I loved loved the ending. I thought the ending was the best part of the whole movie. It was, yeah, I loved it. But that was only my small little nitpick. Do you have anything else?
There was some scenes too that kind of felt like it went in a circle instead of going in a linear position. I felt like maybe if they edited differently or if they shortened the scene somehow, like we can still get from beginning to end relatively quicker, just a bit. But that part didn't bother me as much. Mostly just the scenes where it was a bit more hand holding that I would have liked, or what was my main concern. Other than that, though, this movie is excellent, and I'm really happy that I'm getting a lot of excellent movies at like the start of the year. Like normally it's a build, but
Yeah,
so far I've probably only had one or two movies that I disliked kind of or shrugged my shoulder at, but otherwise it's a good start, man. I'm really happy right now.
I haven't been disappointed. Sonic 2 slapped from start to finish. Um, yeah, and to be honest, this is the last I've seen movies back to back here. I went last night and I saw one this afternoon, and it's the most packed I think I've seen the theater in a long time. A lot of
That's
people out, a
awesome.
lot of families out today going to see Bad Guys and Sonic, which I
Yeah,
was like, okay, the theaters aren't dying. I mean, I'm watching it. I'm watching a lot of people, a lot of kids running around. That's a big purchase right there. They're getting all their snacks. People want to go to the movies, so I'm here for it. But guys,
yeah, I
what did
love
you
it.
think of the Northman? Comment below. Let me know. Let us know. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. And thank you, Meal patrons. Go get some merch. And as always, thank you for watching. Mom.
See you guys.